Welcome to the brand new Experience Strategy podcast with your host, Joe Pine, author of The Experience Economy and so many other groundbreaking books, Dave Norton, the founder of Stone Mantle and an experienced futurist, and me, Aranza Savas, an expert in meaningful motivation and transformation, which is a launchpad into our topic today. So normally we bring you a trending article related to experience strategy and unpack the strategies of the companies who are experience-led or aiming to be. Today, we're going to talk about the future of experience strategy a little bit and really where we're headed. Joe is authoring another book. It's going to be a biggie. We have no doubt. We've all been very involved in the research and the ideation. We're all passionate advocates for this topic and are just super stoked that Joe is bringing this one to the masses. So the book is tentatively, I think, maybe fully titled.
Absolutely titled.
It's titled
The Transformation Economy, Guiding Customers to Achieve Their Aspirations.
Oh, yeah. Again, as somebody who has spent my career in transformation and aspiration, I couldn't be more excited for this topic. Let's talk first about why this book now, Joe.
Now, we'll mention first that both of you are quoted in the book, so just so hopefully it'll survive the last edits. But yeah, the transformation was in fact in the original experience economy in 1999. It was in articles we wrote about it in 1997. When I discovered the experience economy, I simultaneously figured out that we only ever change through our experiences. That the transformative experiences are how we achieve our aspirations. But so it was the last two chapters in the experience economy, and ever since then I've been asked, well, when are you going to write a full book on it? And my response was always that one, the world isn't ready for it, and two, I don't know enough about it. And today, obviously, the world is ready for it. I mean, it's so, the last 5 years in particular, I think it's just the notion of transformative experiences, the focus on transformation, your work, including Erasmus and that, really shows that the world's ready for it. And I did know enough to start. I know a whole lot more now, but I did know enough to start the book, more than what I had in the original book. And to a large measure, a lot of that was working on the collaboratives. Mm-hmm. How many years, David, we had the transformation track within the collaboratives? Like 4 or 5?
I think this is 4.
This is 4, yeah. But we've been talking about it off and on before that. But yeah.
Right. Even then. So the collaboratives, in fact, were a great instigator. And I learned so much from talking to all of our clients, the participants in the collaborative, on the provocations that you and Arances and Mary and others would put forward, on the fact that you'd constantly ask me to say something about it, even if I hadn't thought about it. And so I'd come up with something and go, oh, yeah, that's pretty good. Let me remember that. So now I do know enough. And like I said, I've learned so much in the writing of it that it is virtually done. The due date for the final draft is Monday.
Woo! Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank
That's
you.
huge. I think we need to spend a little more time on what you mean when you say the world is now ready and the changes that have proven that to you without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
I think that one, I mean, the word transformation is such a big word. I think that's the second sentence in the book, basically. Transformation, first sentence. It's a big word, right? It's something to that effect. And it's a scary word often when we talk about it, but you just increasingly see it being used. Obviously, there's a lot of synonyms, and particularly around change and so forth, around metamorphosis. And there were words, metamorphosis is not a word you saw in business 10, 20 years ago. It's like when we wrote the experience economy, we had a section on wisdom, which is part of this book as well. And I can remember, I actually searched, I can only find one book on wisdom for businesses, in the entire world. Now, Chip Conley's written wonderful stuff on it, and many others. So you see also other people are talking about it. And another example is the World Experience Organization. Right, the WXO founded 5 years ago, also I think, or thereabouts, and with the last 3 summits, I mean the biggest group within it are experience designers themselves. Right, there's real estate, there's developers, there's operators, there's money people, and so forth, but the biggest group is actual experience designers, and they almost universally talk about transforming people through their experiences, about transformative experiences. You can't have a conversation at the summits without doing that. And so that was one that really struck me, right? I didn't expect that. That they were already thinking about it, basically. And so that's what I mean, right? They're ready to design it. They are designing it. The world is ready to receive it.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking about the research we did not long ago for the collaboratives about like what do people want to call a transformation?
Right,
And we
right.
have to talk about that, but overwhelmingly they're like, and this is from the customer perspective, please don't use the word transformation. That is freaky.
I say that sometimes.
Don't be weird. You're scaring me. But I'd be willing to bet that in 3 to 5 years, that word will become acceptable to consumers
Yes.
and
Yeah.
no longer scary, right?
Well,
And so
and that
we've gotten to the point now where we've hit the tipping point with the creators and they're ready to use the word transformation internally. Can't say it out loud to customers yet, but we can say it internally. And this to me echoes so much of what we talked about in the Weight Watchers transformation 2 weeks ago on this podcast, right? We were like, let's do the whole self transformation and not just change your weight, right?
Right.
And the customer's like, whoa, 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 too much. I'm overwhelmed, right? And I
But if you
think that
talk to them, if you have the weight loss, but you then start to talk to them about these things, like bring it in and invite them into that transformation, then you're going to find them much more welcoming to it.
that's right. That's right. Create the experience of transformation, not the promise. And I think that's been a huge piece of what we've looked at is the difference between promising transformation and just offering transformation.
Right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Joe, one of the things you didn't allude to, but I think is really also driving this, and you probably would agree with this, is technology is making it more and more possible for us to support tracking, to support diagnostics, to support assistance that's personalized to the individual. So, do you think that that's also part of the reason why we're more ready
Yeah,
for it
yeah.
now?
I hadn't put in those terms, but now that you mention it, I absolutely do. The fact
Hmm.
that it's so easy to track things. Well, I mean, to get that baseline and then track your changes over time through apps, through the devices that we have. This is the time, Dave, where you pull up your Aura ring because you always have that on, right?
Oh, is that my
There
ordering
you go.
on?
Right through those things means that it does make it easier, and it's also true that it is most of those are still being used on a sort of a standalone basis. In other words, they haven't been integrated into a Weight Watchers offering or a Ozempic offering or others that are there, and that's still sort of waiting to be done. People are have long been, for the most part, and just like we used to be responsible for making our own commodities and goods and services and experiences, now we pay other people. Transformations is at that stage where we've always been responsible for ourselves, what I call it, that we're our own general contractor, right? So we hire a self-help book, we hire a device, we hire a tracking app and so forth and try to put it together ourselves. But guess what? It's hard, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to do it.
Harder than anything else.
Exactly. It's the hardest thing in the world to be able to truly transform yourself. And so companies getting into the business of helping us do it, greatly increases the chances that we can make it happen, shortens the time it takes to happen, makes it easier on us, and allows that focus on the real transformation to be there.
Yeah.
It's funny because I have been experiencing this in my recreational life just a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. So about 5 years ago, I started taking voice lessons because I have a terrible voice. Terrible, could not. I like to say I had an incredible range. I just couldn't hit the notes, you know.
Oh, I thought you were just talking about talking. You meant singing.
Well, that's true too. And today I have a cold, so that doesn't make it any
Right.
better. But I started taking lessons from an opera singer, and at first he just had to completely work on basic things like how to do a warm up. It's really, and now 5 years later, I can sing really much better myself. I'll never be as good as him, but he's been working with me. Today, I had my first lesson on how to read music. So I have done all of this work on my voice for the last 5 years,
Wow.
but I've had to rely on, I mean, I can play the piano a little bit. So it's not like I can't read music, but today I had to start all over again on very basic things like what is a chord and how do I move up in my register and things like that. So and it's been so much fun. It's been a great experience for me. It's something I do for myself. It's not something that I do professionally or any other way, but I, I'm excited about it, and it is hard.
Well,
So
two things are
the
coming
next
up for me as you
collaborative, sorry, the next collaborative, Francis, we gotta find a karaoke opera bar.
um, consider it done. Two things are coming up for me as you said that, Dave. And one is recently reading a story in New York Magazine about the guy that you call in when you need a movie star to sing in a movie. And he also coaches lots and lots of famous singers. And I mean, he's just sort of legendary, I guess, in Hollywood. And what he described was that he's not really teaching them to sing. He's teaching them to trust their voice and to trust themselves. So, what he's doing is transformation through skill development, which I think is so much of what we see in the transformation economy. It's not like you're saying, hey, there are a lot of places they're not promising, I'm going to transform you. But I'm going to teach you something that will transform you, or I'm going to teach you something that will have lots of other benefits on your life, right? And so I think that is a lot of what drives this economy, which brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about, which is you guys remember the day that we all sat around and we were like, what does transformation mean? Is it expensive? Is it cheap? How expensive does it have to be in order to feel like transformation? Is it changes one thing dramatically? Does it change everything? And then the third question we asked was, does it change temporarily or does it change forever? And we did some research on that for the collaboratives. And I think some of that has ended up in the book, Joe. So how are you talking about that research now in the book?
Yeah, one of the things is that issue of temporary or permanent. And I've always been set from the very beginning, again, 30 years ago, you weren't transformed unless it lasts, right? I mean, if you go through a smoking cessation program and you quit smoking, but 3 weeks later you light up again, were you truly transformed? No. But the collaborative research had this very interesting output that said that you got it down to seeing differently and doing differently, right? You transform by seeing differently, your perspective on things, your viewpoints in that, and you transform by doing differently, whether it's skill development or whether it is behavior and so forth. And there were people that said that they transformed without either of those, right? That even though it was like this is the whole bucket. No, we still transform, but But in the end, they didn't see or do differently, right? It was a temporary, so to speak. And so I thought long and hard about that, and I thought about using that framework in the book. I had two sort of competing frameworks for it, and the fact that I couldn't get either one of them to do everything I wanted, I ended up coming up with a different one. But anyway, but it was great thinking. So what I ended up doing is calling that a quasi transformation, right? And it's a box in chapter 1 of the book that people do like to change temporarily. And I think the classic example is probably LARPing, live action role playing, or other forms of cosplay, even like Halloween costumes. And you think about, you put on a costume and people can't tell who you are. You behave differently, right?
Yes.
And you enjoy it, even though you never intend on bringing that back. But you view it as, hey, I was different. I wasn't me, right? And all transformation change is identity change. So if you can say I wasn't me, then to you were transformed. Even then you go back, right? And I was also shocked by how many examples I could find of people actually doing that and wanting to do those sort of quasi transformations.
I think of the original example from Dave, which was Men's Warehouse, which I thought was such a great crystallizing example of the temporary transformation. Hey, friends, you probably already know that Joe, Dave, and I lead a year-long program called the Experience Strategy Collaboratives. It's designed to help strategists build better experiences. It's springtime, so of course, it's that time of year when we invite a new group of experienced strategists to step into the collaboratives and become master strategists. You and your company join the program and you decide on a project or initiative that you want to be informed by the research we do. Other non competing companies also join. Each quarter, we have summits where you meet people from other industries. And in between, Stone Mantle does amazing research on your behalf to advance your initiative and the other companies. This year, our theme is Only Companies with a Point of View Survive. And for listeners of this podcast, we have an amazing experience to offer. For one happy listener, we'll be giving away a one-person membership. That's a $35,000 value. Yep, that happy winner can participate in the collaboratives for free. There's just a few roles, and you have to subscribe to the Experience Strategist Substack to be eligible. We've posted an entry form in the show notes, which is also available on Substack. Go to the experiencestrategist.substack.com for all the details.
Yeah, no, it's you put on the tux and you're transformed, right? And then you take the tux off and you're not. So I do like this idea that it is a quasi transformation. I do, wonder if the person sees it as kind of like a temporary state, type of thing that they're going through. But but I love, Joe, I love your work. It's great work. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is you're gonna to talk about the relationship between experiences and transformations, because you have historically said that experiences as an offering are as distinct from services as services are from goods. And I assume that you're going to continue along that vein. And yet,
Yeah.
it requires
An
experience
experience for a
to
transformation.
create transformations.
Right.
Can you
Right.
talk about
Yeah.
that for a second?
Yeah. So there are five distinct economic offerings, and all of them are distinct, right? With commodities, goods, services, experiences, and transformations, and uh, and they all depend on each other, right? So they all subsume each other. You can't make goods without raw materials. You can't provide services without some sort of physical, place or technology. You can't stage experiences with all the activities that people do, and you can't transform, especially without experiences. We only ever change through the experiences we have. As the old saying goes, we're all the product of our experiences. So they are they're distinct, right? And the key is like it changes you and it lasts. We can talk about a few others, but it's very intertwined. Probably, like commodities and goods, right? Because the raw materials, you can see them, still in your goods and that sort of thing. You can't see the service activities and so forth as much, but they're heavily intertwined. You have to have those experiences. So in that sense, transformation strategy incorporates or subsumes experience strategy. You have to have them, and there are. And so one of the things I discovered too, some other writers have written about some of this, is that there's actually levels of experiences. So in terms of the economic distinction between a service and experiences, one of the key things is memorability, right? If you did not remember it, it wasn't an experience. It was a mere service. And so one level is memorable experiences. And then that basically engage who we are. Then there's meaningful experiences, right, that connect with who we are in a different way. So they're engaging, but they're also connecting. And the collaborative has also done a lot of great research on meaningful experiences. I don't know if you want to say something in particular about it, otherwise we should spend time on that topic at a future one. And then what I discovered during the writing is a third level, which is transporting experiences that take us out of who we are. Right?
Is that like the LARPing example?
Yeah, well, the LARPing is an example. Exactly. Is that what I found is those were transporting experiences. It's also when you have a peak experience, right? You have euphoria in whatever you're doing. When you experience awe, and nature's wonder and so forth. When you get into flow, is a transporting experiences, right? Partly they all really affect your perception of time, right? Is what they all do. And so the ones we talked about were often transporting experiences, transformational travel, down the plate, transporting experiences, right? You go out in the world, you discover new things, you have that awe, and then maybe you transform because of it. But then the question is, does it last? Right. So the fourth level is transformative experiences, and I'll say you could have a transformative experience without it being a full transformation, right? In particular, without you as a transformation guider, that you ensure that it lasts, right? And that's the key. So you got three basic phases of transformation. A diagnosis of understanding who they are and what they want, right? What's the from to statement? I'm going to go from this to that. Then you design the set of experiences. They could be memorable, meaningful, transporting as well, but the transformative experiences that affect that transformation, generally not one life-changing experience, but generally a series of them over time. But then they get to that point and say, okay, I was X, now I am Y. You have to sustain it, right? That's a key distinction, economic distinction between transformation experiences that is sustained through time. And so you have to have follow through and help make that happen.
Yeah, and all of our industry research points to that being the biggest gap. Exactly. That there are plenty of companies who are out there saying, okay, we're ready to get into this business and we're going to create an experience that creates change, but we're not going to help you sustain it because that's hard.
Right. It's even, to a degree, it's as hard as the original transformation is to be able to do that.
Sure is.
But if you recognize those four levels, right, then you design your experience strategy. Think about where you're at now, which levels. How can you go up that mini progression within the progression of economic value and develop the ability to guide your customers to change through the experiences that they're having with you?
And that's where the economic value comes in.
Exactly.
It's through supporting it, right? And I think that's where companies get confused is they're like, but I made it.
Yeah, I like
if it doesn't work, then you're probably not going to get the benefit of the word of mouth for all your transformation, which transformation is, I think, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, even though I haven't thought about it too much, but I think it's right. It is more dependent on word of mouth than any other element of that progression of economic value.
That's interesting. Something to think about and something we could look at. I going back to the tux example, the Men's Warehouse example, you could argue that putting on a tux for the first time is a transporting experience, but it could be a transformative experience. It doesn't turn you into a gentleman, right? It doesn't turn you. Yeah, but it helps you to. It's one of those experiences that helps you to imagine your from to state.
Imagine that future self.
You visualize
Imagine exactly the future self.
Yep. And
cool.
I think if we say their names 10 more times, maybe we can get them out of the collaborative. I'm like Beetlejuicing Men's Warehouse because I really think they need to join our collaborative because I think it's just such a huge opportunity space for companies like that. So this book, it's almost done. What do you think is going to rattle people the most?
That's a great question. The thing that immediately comes to mind may not be the most, right? Particularly the word rattle, but the one that I think will take business people aback is similar to what we said in the experience economy, which is that if you're truly in the business of staging experiences, then you need to charge admission. You need to charge for the time your customers spend with you.
Preach.
Right. And then with transformations, if you're truly in the transformation business, you need to charge for the outcomes your customers achieve, because inputs don't matter, only outcomes. And it's only when you make your income dependent on your customers' outcomes that you will best define the set of experiences that will, in fact, transform them and sustain it.
Yes. I love that. I think that is going to be the story.
It's a hard one.
It's why
It
it's
is.
actually in both the first and last chapters because of that. It's like, I want you to know this now because I'm going to talk about ones that are, and then here's how to do it in the last chapter.
And I think companies just haven't been built for that. But it's, Dave talks a lot about experience strategy as business strategy. And this is the perfect example of that.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And they're going to have to change their business models if they're going to work. And you, I think, Joe, are going to talk about in the book that they oftentimes need partners in order to pull this off. It is a big lift oftentimes, and there's no reason for one company to do everything themselves.
Right. You generally don't have the capabilities to do everything yourself. So you want to integrate solutions to create one transformation offering for your customers, that often you will not have everything it takes to be able to do that. So it's very important to think about your partners, even to think about the notion of a coalition that works together on a long-term basis versus just I'm going to buy this from you and incorporate it in my offering. But how can I partner with people? How can we share a point of view about how transformation goes on so we can work together on a long-term basis?
And really setting up for that sustainability and that follow through. So the book is you're leaving your hands on Monday, but
Right.
all of the content is available on Substack, right?
Yes. So I've been writing it on Substack for the last 13 months, 14, 15 months actually. And so not everything that I've written that'll be in the final book has yet been published on Substack, but most has. And then we've been doing a lot of editing on it. There's a lot that was published on Substack that won't in the end make it up in the book. But it's also been just such a great experience of having people give me feedback on what is in there. And then even I have Zoom sessions with paid subscribers, every 6 weeks or so if they want to come in and talk. And that's where I've gotten the greatest feedback. And I can say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And so forth. So it's been most valuable. So once I get it like truly done, and there'll still be some little bit of editing to go, but they've got all the chapters and complete and everything by Monday. Then on Substack, I am actually going to march through the book, right? So the free subscribers get some of it. Paid subscribers get all of it. Paid subscribers also get a free. This should be our commercial for the day. Paid subscribers also get a free signed copy of the book, right? If they stay paid through January. And so we'll send that out to them. And thanks for all they've done to contribute to it.
I'll tell you, when I think about what happened with your book, The Experience Economy, that term didn't exist. Companies weren't organized around it. Nobody had a chief experience officer title. None of that existed. And so I think about the change from that point to now. And I think about what's possible for transformation, and it's really freaking exciting.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope it has half the impact that the experience.
I'll take a quarter.
One interesting thing, yeah, I will too. One interesting thing is that there are already tons of chief transformation officers, but they're all focused internally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? What we need is who's the first chief transformation officer that's focused on the transformation of customers,
Yes.
rather than internally.
Oh, Dave, I'm going to go work for them.
I think healthcare is where it's going to happen first, probably, but we'll see.
Well, and I think too, even as we talk to people about the collaborative, we have to start with, oh, by the way, we're not talking about your company's transformation. We're talking about your because it is so ingrained. And so there is going to be some language shift, but the same thing happened with experience economy. So we're all ready.
Yeah.
It's super exciting. Can't wait for this book to come out. Can't wait to share it broadly. And of course, for those of you listening to this podcast, we'll make sure to share a link to Joe's Substack and to the Experience Strategy Substack in the show notes. And reach out to us. If there's an article you're dying for us to unpack and to give some POV on, share it over to us either on Substack or LinkedIn or over on our website, stonemantle.co.